Hey everybody, Kosante should be unbuffed, and I'm making a video that will hopefully be extremely educational and go over all the different concepts for why he should be unbuffed, why it was really obvious that the buffs are going to make him overpowered, and hopefully Riot and everyone else can come back to this video and learn some things. Originally I was going to do a silly song, but then while I was making this video I realized I actually really want to make it educational, and I actually really want people to be able to come back to this video a month, a year from now and be able to continue to learn from that. So Kosante was released about a month ago. Since then, on the first patch, he had a mere 45% win rate. After that, he had a mere 48% win rate, and then he got these buffs. And I'm not going to show his win rate after these buffs, but I need to talk about a few concepts that go into why his win rate being like that isn't exactly the full picture. So let's go back to 12.21. This is when Kosante was released. On his release, he had a 45% win rate. Now, the thing is, throughout the patch, his win rate continued to rise. Now, I'm sure we can all agree that when a champion is newly released, that they are not being played, let's say, masterfully to the optimal condition. When the patch just released, his win rate was about 41%. Then, over the course of the patch, his win rate went to about 45%. So then people say, 45%, he's so obviously underpowered. But no, because of how data works, all these old win rate numbers were still being used in his final win rate of 45.84%. That meant that over the course of the patch, his win rate was actually higher than 45% because it had to equalize out with this 41% to get to 45%. So his true win rate, once people had learned the champion and once they'd gotten to the end of the patch, was actually probably more like 48%, but it equalized back down to 45%. That's seen during the next patch, where his win rate actually went to 48.66%. But the thing was, it continued to rise once again. So going off this chart here, we can see that actually his win rate was still higher than 48%. Now in 12.22, the other issue was, and this is something a lot of people don't notice, Jack Show was actually hotfix buffed early on into the patch. Jack Show was his core item. It was hotfix buffed, and the thing was, those few days of when Jack Show was hotfix buffed were still being factored in to this 48%. So actually, his win rate was much higher even than 48%, because if he had 48, I'm writing this very terrible. If he had 48% and this is with the pre-Jack Show being factored in, his win rate was probably more like, I don't know why I'm writing this on, so really probably more like a 49%. And this is on the second patch of the champion. He was still being fine-tuned. People were still getting much better at playing him. Now, here's the second issue I want to go over. It takes time to learn a champion, but at the higher ranks, let's go back to 12.21, at the higher ranks, people put much more time into the game because generally speaking, the higher rank you are, the better you are at the game. So if we could look at the higher ranks, his win rate was actually 47%. So at the Platinum, it was 45%. Masters Plus, which is a much higher rank, is 47%. At all ranks, meaning the much lower ranks, it was 44. So we have 44 at the low ranks, we have 45 at the mid ranks, and we have 47% at the high ranks. So in 12.22, the second patch, it was actually up to 50%. So despite it being a mere 48%, but really 49% once you factor in that Jack Show was hotfix buffed. But once you figure in this win rate was actually using the pre-buff Jack Show, you can see that actually he was doing just fine. The mid-ranking and the low-ranking people would have continued to get better at him. The high-ranking people who had put a lot of time would still continue to get better at him. At the third highest picked top laner, not overall, but for top lane, the third highest picked top laner, a 50% win rate, the champion was doing absolutely fine. But then he got buffed. Now, you could be saying to yourself, these buffs aren't very big, these buffs aren't doing a lot, but here's the second issue that a lot of people aren't realizing. Sunfire Aegis, this is a core item, this is an item that Kosante uses. Sunfire Aegis got buffed. So if Sunfire Aegis gets buffed and Kosante gets buffed, that means Kosante is really being buffed 2 times. So going back to Paint here, what will his win rate do if his item gets buffed? Will it stay the exact same? Well, obviously not. How do I, there we go, brush, wait. So if he has a 48, but let's be fair, a 49% win rate, will it go up if Sunfire gets buffed, or will it go down if Sunfire gets buffed? This is a really simple question. Obviously, it will go up. So even if all they had done was buff Sunfire, Kosante's win rate would have gone up. So we go to the mid ranks and we go to last patch, this 48, which is really a 49%, once you remember that Jack Shot was hotfixed during the patch, would have become maybe a 49.5, maybe even a 50%. But here's the thing, you have to remember, people are getting better at the game. So we would really have become a 50% win rate, and we can see that, we can understand that. With the Sunfire buffs, and with him still being a new champion, people only had 2 weeks to prepare for this patch. Then on this patch, they only had 2 weeks. So people got really, really much better at Kosante. So now we can obviously see here, let's go to the current patch, that his current win rate is 51.25%, which is a little bit over the top. Not like a huge amount over the top, but obviously a little bit over the top. But we're still only a month into the champion. Now, how do I know? How do I know that Kosante's win rate will continue to increase? Because Kosante has a high skill floor. That means you have a lot of concepts that you need to know in order to play Kosante. He has a lot of abilities. I'm not going to go into them in particular, but when we look at his stats, this is his win ranked by ranked games played. With no ranked games played, first timing him, you have a 45% win rate. After a mere 10 games, you go all the way up to a 53% win rate. Now, basically, every champion in the game is going to have a higher win rate if they're not being first time. But how does this compare to other champions then? How does this compare to harder, or I should say easier champions? What does your average champion go up in win rate over your first 10 games? Well, let's compare that to Garen. Garen goes from 50% first timing him to 52%. So Garen goes up 2% win rate. Kosante goes up 8% win rate. So yes, it's pretty provable that Kosante has a very, very high skill floor. You need to know a lot about this champion, and even 10 games can help you immeasurably in playing him better. But it gets even better, because then we can see that, and these you can see these graphs get a little bit weird. They're not perfect, right? But if you average it out, you can see that yes, up until about 50 games played, he sees marked improvement, right? I'll say even 40 games played, but it's really more like 50. You have to like average these, because again, these stats can be all over. You need to average them up. Garen, on the other hand, outside of wackiness here, Garen caps out at about 30 games, going from 50% to, I'll be even lenient, let's say 54%. So Garen's win rate can go up by about 4% by getting really good at him. Kosante, on the other hand, goes from a 45% win rate to almost a 60% win rate. So let's cut that close. Let's say a 13% win rate increase. Garen can go up to a 4% win rate increase over, let's say, 30, 40 games. Kosante goes up to a 13%. So Kosante has a very high skill cap. Even with 10 games into him, you're going to continue to do much better over time, correct? And you need those first 10 games just to pick the champion up. So we can see here, once we go to Masters Plus, that yes, Kosante is now the #1 pick top laner with a very high win rate. Now, obviously, we only have 2,000 games played. Obviously, this number, I think it'll deflate a little bit, but we're still going to be, at best, at a low 52%. Maybe not a high 52%, but it'll be at least a low 52% over time. So, did he need these buffs? No, and let's go into exactly what is wrong with the buffs they did with him, in fact. So if we go back to Kosante and let's look at how they buffed him. They wanted to buff him because they wanted to buff him in average skill brackets. So if we're on current patch and we look back to the bad players, right? The bad players are still 48%, 48.92% on Kosante. But the problem here is the buffs they did from health regeneration affects mostly the early game. The early game is what the high-ranking people, the best players, like to do. They like to win the early game, then snowball the game. Health regen is one of the best ways to win the early game because you just have more health than your opponent, obviously. So the issue here is that they buffed him in a way that helped out the high ranks who were already doing good with him. The low-ranking people, they would continue to put more games into the game. They're low rank. They're going to continue to put more games in the game, but they don't play that often. Okay, when we're talking about the all ranks, we're talking about your brother who plays maybe 3-4 games a week. We're talking about your grandma who's decided to take up League of Legends as a hobby to connect with her grandkids, okay? All ranks includes iron, bronze, silver, all the lowest ranked people. And because there's much more of them, all ranks is primarily those low-ranking people. That's a concept I've told people a lot. So by buffing his health regen, they helped out the low ranks. Now, health growth, that affects mostly the later in the game, correct? So that did help out the low ranks, and that did flesh him out and make him more tanky into the late game. That was probably fine. But this buff here was also, I'm talking specifically about his E being an auto attack reset. Now, for those who don't know, Kosante's E, he dashes a little bit forward with a shield. Aatrox dashes a little bit forward on his ability too. Aatrox's E was an auto attack reset. So you could auto attack E and then instantly auto attack again. Do you get that? Now, the issue here is a lot of people would play Kosante after playing Aatrox, because we can see here, if I go back to when Kosante was immediately released, we can see Aatrox is the highest picked champion. At Platinum, Aatrox is the highest picked champion. So at the medium to high ranks, Aatrox is the most picked champion. So a lot of people went to Kosante, and his E was this very similar ability, dash forward a little bit, and it wasn't an auto attack reset. And a lot of people, like me, used it and were frustrated because despite being on the same key on your keyboard, despite being a very similar style of ability, it wasn't doing the auto attack reset. Now that's fine, different champions are different. But because it's now an auto attack reset after this buff, that gives Kosante a stronger early game. That gives him more ability to harass. That gives him more ability to get in good combos. And the thing is, it doesn't scale very well into the late game because Kosante doesn't really build damage. He's a tank, right? Now, in his ultimate, he might have damage, but I'll get into that later. In fact, I won't get into that. He already has an auto attack reset on his Q in his ultimate. So he already has so many auto attack resets, the E wasn't that big a deal. The big deal is in the early game, Kosante can Q, auto attack you, E forwards, auto attack you, and get in pretty good harass, right? This helped out his early game more so than his late game. So as we can see here, pretty much irrefutably, if we go to last patch, Kosante had a healthy 50% win rate. Now Kosante's got a 52.72% win rate. Of course, we don't have many matches, only 2,000 matches played. Okay, this isn't a huge number, but you can see that with the highest games played by far, Kosante is now dominating the high ranks. So, in my opinion, after going through all these different concepts, we need to agree that Kosante needs this health regen reverted and this auto attack and his E reverted. I 100% believe that they should just hotfix this in before people start getting used to his E being an auto attack reset. Before people get used to that, I think they should revert it. Because the issue is they're going to have to nerf something on the champion. They are. Something on Kosante will have to be nerfed. Did he need a higher skill cap? Did he need a higher skill floor? No, he did not. And we can see that pretty clearly. He's got one of the highest skill floors and skill caps of any champion in the game. While a lot of champions can have a high skill cap and a low skill floor, or a high skill floor and a low skill cap, meaning it might take you a while to play the champion, but once you get them, you're pretty much good, or the champion's really easy to pick up, but then it's hard to master. Kosante is hard to pick up and hard to master. So he did not need more things that you needed to learn. You did not need more things you needed to get good at on the champion. That's just bad balance, in my opinion. You don't need to make every champion the most difficult, hardest to play champion in the entire known universe. Okay, so I hope after this video we can understand why I would say let's revert these Kosante buffs. Okay, we can maybe keep the health growth one to keep him better at the low ranks, but the auto attack reset needs to go. The base health regeneration needs to go. He's going to be nerfed anyway. They're not going to leave him this overpowered. People are still going to be getting better at Kosante. It's been a month since his release, and he's a pretty difficult champion. We saw even with easy champions like Set that he continued to get better and better over the course of 2 months until Riot had to chain nerf him because every time they nerfed him, people just got better at the champion, and then they nerfed him, and then people got better at the champion. Even now, I would wager, if we give this another 2 weeks, another month, that I would wager Kosante's win rate is going to continue to increase over time, over patches, and will likely end up at 53% because people are going to get better at him. For this patch, I think he got a little bit lucky early into the patch and we're at low games played. But next patch, a patch after that, after he becomes meta, after everyone starts to learn him and play him, yeah, he's going to end up at like a 53% win rate. Okay? So I hope everybody understands this concept. I hope everybody understands that you need to give people time to get good at a champion. 55% win rate, in all honesty, is fine on the first patch. I've seen this time and time again after champion releases. They have 55% win rate. They're basically unplayable. No, how could anyone play them? No, 55% win rate on the first patch is fine. And on the first patch, if they're a very high pick and they're doing sort of okay at Masters Plus, then they're also fine. Give people a little bit of time to adjust. And if you do need to buff the champion, buff them in a way that helps the rank you're trying to buff them. Okay? So when you want to buff him at the low ranks, you don't buff his early game, you buff his late game. If you want to buff them in the high ranks, then you buff their early game, not their late game. Because at the early ranks, at the low ranks, people aren't good enough to end the game. At the high ranks, people are good enough to end the game. The higher rank you go, the shorter game duration becomes. Does everybody understand this whole concept? Okay. So I hope you'll get through this. Thank you everybody for watching. Make sure to like, make sure to comment, make sure to, just like the video and then leave a comment down below. Give me your thoughts on any of this, okay? If you agree, if you disagree with anything. My end opinion here, I wrote this down. You have to balance around challenger/tournaments because people can get better, but they don't really get worse. Once LCS/LCK/LPL/etc., once those high-ranking tournament-level professional players start to pick ban K'Sante, he will be nerfed, and he will be nerfed much harder than these buffs were. I think the best way to do it is to nerf him now by undoing these buffs, undoing the auto-attack reset before people get used to it, before it feels very uncomfortable to remove it. Okay, you need to do that. Okay, so thank you all for watching. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, everybody. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.